and made the decision to start him as a rookie. Now, in terms of the sports line impact for the Saints, if they add Carr, I mean, you're looking at minimal jumps in a lot of these categories, but the Saints' chances of winning the Super Bowl now above 1%. So that's some good news there. He potentially joins a division that have quarterback questions heading into 2023. The Falcons have Desmond Ridder under contract, Tampa Bay with Kyle Trask, Carolina with Matt Corral and Jacob Eason, and then there are the Saints. Jameis Winston and Jake Luton, there we go, and Derek Carr, now under contract. All right, Brady Quinn is here to talk about the Carr move and some franchise tag news. But let's start with Carr. How do you like this move for him? How do you like this move for the Saints?
I love it for him. I think it's a great fit, especially when you've got a young wide receiver in Chris Olave there who demonstrated the fact that he can be a number one in this league. And they do have some playmakers, Alvin Kamara as well. That offensive line when healthy. They're capable of putting up a lot of points. He's got familiarity with the head coach, Dennis Allen, going back to their days with the Raiders when Dennis Allen was head coach. And the last thing I'd say is, who's your competition? I mean, if you're looking throughout the NFC South, we saw a team with a losing record in the Tampa Bay Bucks win it this year. Well, Tom Brady's no longer there anymore. So it's a clear path, I think, to now looking at this division saying the Saints are the favorite. Derek Carr can win the division, get them in the playoffs, and then see where things go. And let's just go one step further. We're all expecting Aaron Rodgers, if he comes back, probably to be traded to an AFC team. We know the Packers don't want to trade him there. Who's your competition in the NFC as far as the other quarterbacks, the opposing quarterbacks you're going up against? And we can take a look at some of the guys currently on the Saints roster. This will be shook up. I would imagine Jameis Winston will end up being a cap casualty when it's all said and done, probably later on after June 1 of this year. But it's set up for Derek Carr to come in, be the guy, and eventually take over. And I think potentially even make a run in the NFC. Again, going back to the initial point, there is not much competition as far as quarterbacks in the NFC. The AFC is loaded. NFC, not so much.
Okay, so as we look at Carr, and as you said, I mean, there are some pieces there for him, so there is a chance that he can have some success, especially in that division. We saw what the quarterbacks in that division look like in terms of who's under contract. So switching over to the AFC, let's talk about the Jets. I mean, that was where we all thought he was going to go to the Jets. So the Jets miss out. What now for the green and white?
I mean, you're turning all your attention to two guys. That's Aaron Rodgers and Jimmy Garoppolo, who we know is not going back with the San Francisco 49ers, according to their head coach and Kyle Shanahan. That would make the most sense. And I think if you're a Jets fan, you're hoping and praying it's Aaron Rodgers. And you're going to have to do whatever you can to be able to get him on the roster if he wants to come back and play. And assuming he does, that him and the Packers are going to separate and go their different ways. You got Nathaniel Hackett there. That's maybe part of the draw. But again, another roster with a lot of young talent that's very capable of potentially competing and making a run. But if you look at this situation, Jeremy, the crazy thing is, this happened before with Kirk Cousins when he used the Jets as leverage to get a little better contract out of the Minnesota Vikings. So once again, we see that the Jets are scorned by a quarterback who hits free agency and uses them as potential leverage to get a better contract with a team like the Saints, which at least according to David Carr, Derek's brother, that was where Derek Carr wanted to be all along.
Wow, and as you said, I mean, if you're a Saints fan, a Jets fan, you're hoping and praying that Aaron Rodgers is going to be the guy. Let's get to franchise tag news. The deadline, 4 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow. Dallas getting out ahead of that and tagging running back Tony Pollard. He joins Duron Payne from the Commanders as officially tagged players. This is not a surprise, is it?
No, it's not a surprise because of, one, I think what Mike McCarthy has already said publicly he'd like to do. He wants to run the football. He wants to be able to take care of his defense, shorten games, limit the amount of times they're out there on the field. He kind of talked about that lack of balance with Kellen Moore calling plays and how things are going to be different with him calling plays. So it was a sneak peek into, I think, what they were going to do. But Pollard's a tremendous player. He's a home run hitter out of the backfield. He's kind of what Zeke used to be. Zeke is now kind of more of the thunder maybe to the lightning along with Tony Pollard. So you slap on the exclusive franchise tag. It's a high amount of money to be paying Tony Pollard. But what it really does is give you more times to negotiate that longer-term deal. And if you can't, so be it. You can revisit this at the end of next season. But I would imagine that's part of the thought process here, too, is you put him under the one-year exclusive franchise tag, but it just buys you more time to negotiate that longer-term deal.
And the fact that it's exclusive means that, he is going to be talking to the Cowboys. No other team's going to reach out to him. What does this mean for Zeke?
Well, there's the potential that he could be a cap casualty. Given his cap numbers, the Cowboys don't own him very much moving forward, if anything, for that matter. So they could move on from him. It just seems like Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones are so reluctant to move on from players that they absolutely love and really set a precedent in. You know, signing a running back, which really set the running back market when he still had 2 years left on his rookie deal. It was completely unnecessary. Stephen Jones and Jerry Jones have no one else but themselves to look at for putting themselves in this situation with Zeke Elliott. But eventually, if he's not able to produce the way Tony Pollard can, you got to cut bait and move forward.
Let's stick with running backs and talk about the Raiders. Their plan is to tag NFL leading rusher from last season, Josh Jacobs. That's if they can't come to a contract agreement by 4 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow. I have to throw that in because they are still talking. That puts him at $10 million for next season in terms of his salary?
Yeah, roughly a little bit more than that, too. I think when you look at the franchise tag number for running backs, it's still a decent amount for a running back against the cap. The reality is Josh Jacobs is one of the best running backs in the NFL. And if you feel like you've got a chance to build something, keep him around. Maybe that's part of the pitch for a potential player like Aaron Rodgers to say, we're going to have balance, we're going to have a rushing attack, we're going to have someone you can dump the ball off to. It's going to be interesting. But again, the franchise tag right now, at least, it just gives you a little greater window to work out a long-term deal. And if not, you at least have this player under control for this season, even though it's a big cap hit. But the bottom line is, it makes sense. If you're the Raiders, you don't want to let go of a guy like Josh Jacobs, who I think has meant a ton to your offense, providing some of that balance you're looking for.
Had the second best season in franchise history in terms of yards there behind Marcus Allen. All right, the Jaguars set to use the tag for the 10th time in their history and the 4th time in a row. They're going to tag, according to reports, tight end Evan Engram. Engram set to make just over $11 million next season after having the best season by a tight end in Jags history.
And this makes a ton of sense too, right? You're always looking for those mismatches on the field. Evan Engram provides the Jacksonville Jaguars just that. And you've got a young budding quarterback in Trevor Lawrence who showcased what he's really capable of this past season. So continue to provide him with talent out around him. Give Engram more time, not only to work out a longer term deal potentially to grow with Trevor Lawrence, but at least just another weapon for this season. As they get Calvin Ridley, who they traded for, which still hasn't been reinstated, but we expect that's going to be the case, to add to this talented group of pass catchers along with Christian Kirk, who they added last offseason. So it makes all the sense in the world. You're in that window right now if you're Jacksonville. You won the division last year, where you've got your quarterback on his rookie deal. And so you got to spend the money when you've got it to surround him with talent and see if you can't surprise a lot of people in the next couple of years and do something special in the playoffs.
Well, and you look at the build of some of the successful teams in the NFL. Tight end is certainly part of that now, adding to the receiving core, not just a blocker, but also a guy who can get out and catch the ball, be a good safety valve for a young quarterback. The Commanders tagged Duron Payne last week, not an exclusive tag, so that means that other teams can talk to him, but obviously the Commanders want to get him tied down to a long-term deal. They've got until July 17th. Here's another player that you do not want to see go into free agency.
No, you wouldn't want to see it go into free agency. The interesting thing is, why slap the non-exclusive franchise tag on him if you're the Commanders in this case? Yeah. He's a tremendous player. He's kind of the anchor of that defense, and he's the type of player that you'd like to kind of work out a long-term deal with. But sometimes, and we're going to hear this phrase more and more as we talk about the non-exclusive tag, when you get a player and his representation and a team, they're not on the same page, you can say, okay, we're going to slap the non-exclusive franchise tag. We'll let someone else do the bidding. And if you don't believe what we feel like your value is fair, then let another team tell you what that is. Now, you may in the end end up paying a premium for it, but in some cases, you may end up paying a little bit less, whether he ends up having to play under the non-exclusive tag or he ends up agreeing to a longer-term deal with another team that was maybe less than you offered him. I don't know that that's the case with Duron Payne, but it may be with another player we're going to talk about.
Yes, the next player we're going to talk about, the Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson. I mean, this is a saga that's been going on for a while now, and there are reports that the Ravens are set to use the tag. I mean, they're far apart on a contract deal, so it looks likely that the tag is coming, but also a non-exclusive franchise tag, which seems like, Brady, we could be setting up for a Lamar Jackson exit here.
Yeah, so the first thing is it would save them. Let's just say he would play under the tag this year. If it's the franchise tag, exclusive franchise tag, $45 million. If it's non-exclusive, $32.5 million, somewhere in the ballpark. So Baltimore, by putting the non-exclusive franchise tag, if Lamar can't get out to an agreement with some other team that Baltimore has to match, they'd be getting at a discount there. Now, the interesting thing is Steve Bisciotti and Eric DeCosta, their general manager there in Baltimore, they've talked about a number of times that they've offered him a long-term deal. It hasn't appeased him. It hasn't satisfied what Lamar Jackson feels like he's worth. Reports are he's looking at the Deshaun Watson deal as far as total guarantees. And it's an outlier. It's a unicorn. I don't know you're going to find any team that wants to, sign their quarterback up for that, at least not right now. And so the interesting thing is, if the Baltimore Ravens put the non-exclusive franchise tag and Lamar Jackson goes out and he's getting help from the NFLPA, he doesn't have representation, it'll be interesting to see if anyone's willing to give him more than what Baltimore's already offered him. And then it might put him in a very precarious situation. Mm-hmm. Is he going to then agree to a long-term deal that's potentially less than what Baltimore had given him? Because there's already this bad blood based on how the negotiations have gone, which Baltimore would still have the chance to match in that case. Yep. And they'd give him for a discount there. Or does he go back and play under the one-year non-exclusive franchise tag, which is guaranteed, but it's a lot less than he would have made under the exclusive franchise tag. It's going to be fascinating to see how this thing plays out.
Well, and that's the thing about the non-exclusive tag is that the team has the chance to match.
Right.
So if he does come to an agreement with another team, they do have the option to try and match that.
And let's just say, hypothetically speaking, a team like the Atlanta Falcons, so we look at and say, well, they're going to go with Desmond Ridder, or is that a team that maybe has the cap space? I think they're the second, third most in the league. But they might be willing to bring in or try to match a contract like that for Lamar Jackson. And you look at the Baltimore Ravens and say, well, what do they get out of the end of this? Well, they get 2 first-round picks from the Atlanta Falcons, if indeed that's how it worked out. Right. Where Lamar agreed to that contract, he goes to Atlanta. In exchange, Baltimore gets 2 first-round picks. It's a good deal for all parties involved. I think you're going to see more teams using the non-exclusive franchise tag for a lot of these negotiations that have a hard time figuring out these long-term deals, and they'll let the other teams in the market dictate what that deal is going to look like.
He is Brady Quinn discussing the franchise tag deadline, which is Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. And they'll be discussing certainly the franchise tag and everything that we're seeing going on in the NFL in the offseason on the Pick Six podcast. Will Brinson, John Breach, Katie Mox, Tyler Sullivan going through the mailbag in the latest episode. Download and follow the Pick Six wherever you get your podcasts.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.